Welcome to Fluent Mind, where learning English feels effortless and relaxing. Tonight, we have something special, an immersive listening experience designed not just to improve your English, but also to calm your mind. Imagine a cozy bakery on a rainy evening, the scent of fresh coffee in the air, the soft patter of raindrops on the window, and the warm glow of candlelight. Now, picture yourself there, sipping a hot drink, completely at ease. That's the experience we're bringing to you tonight. Through soothing stories, rich in natural English, you'll absorb new words and phrases effortlessly just by listening. So, find a comfortable spot, let go of distractions, and allow yourself to sink into the rhythm of the language. No effort, no pressure, just pure relaxation and learning combined. Let's begin. Pumpkin pie and coffee. The soft patter of raindrops against the bedroom window is the first thing Lily hears as she drifts from sleep into wakefulness. She listens, counting each drop as it bursts gently against the glass. But soon they become too many to follow. Instead, she lets her mind wander, the raindrops blending into a soothing rhythm, like grains of rice being poured into a jar. This is the music of the season, she thinks. The gentle rap of the rain, the rustling of leaves in the wind. A smile crosses her face as she imagines the warm hues of autumn, the golden trees, and the slow, beautiful wrapping up of the year. Yawning, she stretches her arms over her head. The world outside is still dark, but it's time to get up. Soon she will put on her coat, step out into the crisp morning air, and walk down to her bakery to prepare for her first customers of the day. Lily doesn't mind being up before the rest of the neighborhood. She loves what she does. The quiet start of the morning, the scent of the first batch of treats in the oven, and the satisfaction of brewing that very first cup of coffee. Seeing the smiles on familiar faces makes every early morning worth it. Plus, it means that by the time night falls, she's always ready for a peaceful rest. She sits up, pushing the warm sheets away and slipping her feet into her plush slippers. With a deep breath, she tiptoes into the kitchen. Everything feels softer at this hour. The darkness outside, the stillness in the air, the way the morning unfolds ever so gently. Through the window, the first hints of morning light stretch behind the neighboring houses. Across the street, her neighbor is still asleep, his curtains drawn. She knows that soon he will be outside tending to his beautiful garden, trimming the grass, and carefully checking each of his flowers. She sighs, feeling grateful for the familiar comforts of her street, the people, the small, simple moments of connection. At the counter, she brews herself a strong cup of black tea, adding just a splash of milk. She watches as the creamy liquid swirls and blends into the dark tea, creating soft ripples of color. Carefully, she carries the warm cup to her usual spot by the window. The first sip is always the best. The tea spreads warmth through her chest, like the gentle glow of embers on a cold day. Outside, the clouds hang low, covering the town in a heavy gray blanket. It's going to rain all day, she thinks, but she doesn't mind. Autumn is meant for cozy sweaters, warm boots, and cheerful scarves. Rainy days mean comforting cups of tea, colorful umbrellas, and the gentle hum of a world slowing down. She finishes the last sip and rinses the cup, leaving it to dry on the bamboo rack. Then she heads to her room to get dressed. One last glance at her cozy bed, and she knows. There will be time to rest later. In the hallway, she pulls on her woolen scarf and felt hat, picking up her bright yellow umbrella before stepping outside. The door clicks shut behind her as she unfurls the umbrella, a pop of color against the gray morning. In the window of the house next door, a little white cat watches her pass. Its owner, an elderly woman, often wears her hair in a neat bun and greets Lily warmly when they cross paths. Today, only the cat is there, its gaze steady, unreadable. She smiles at it and waves. The neighborhood is still asleep, the homes dark, their windows tucked in for the night. A few porch lights flicker, reflecting in the rainwater pooled on the pavement. Street lamps cast a warm yellow glow, their light shimmering across the wet streets. Beneath her umbrella, she feels protected, much like when she used to build blanket forts as a child. Hidden under soft layers of fabric, the world always seemed smaller, safer, more peaceful. She smiles at the memory, pulling her scarf closer around her neck as she steps around puddles, making her way toward the bakery. From a distance, the bright door of the shop stands out against the gray morning. A swirl of green, blue, yellow, purple, and orange. The sight of it makes her heart warm. She remembers painting it one summer evening, letting her brush dance across the wood in carefree spirals. When she had finished, her hands and overalls were speckled with dried paint, but she had laughed, feeling nothing but joy at bringing a little extra color to the world. Now, she slides a brass key into the lock. The door creaks open, revealing the bakery's dimly lit interior, still resting in its nighttime quiet. She steps inside, shaking off her umbrella, and flicks on the lights. A familiar scent greets her, the rich aroma of flour, sugar, and espresso beans. A hint of toasted pecans lingers from yesterday's baking. She takes a deep breath, already running through the day's plans in her mind. First, cinnamon rolls. Like always, but today she'll add some toasted pecans for an extra crunch. She turns on the oven, letting it warm up, then moves to the espresso machine, assembling its gleaming metal parts. The fairy lights overhead flicker to life, casting a soft glow across the shop. She pauses, letting herself soak in the moment. It's important to slow down, she thinks, to appreciate the small joys. With that thought, she reaches under the counter, pulling out 2 large buckets of dough that had been rising overnight. She sprinkles the surface with cinnamon sugar, rolling it into a perfect spiral, then slices it into thick rolls. A dusting of sugar on top, and into the oven they go. Soon, the bakery fills with the scent of warm cinnamon, sugar, and butter. The kind of scent that makes people stop outside just to take a deep breath. The oven beeps, and she pulls out the golden rolls. setting them on a wire rack to cool. Now it's time for the pie. She moves to the pantry, a space she considers her own magic room. A collection of everything she needs, from tubs of flour to tiny jars of vanilla pods. She selects a fresh sugar pumpkin from a farm up the road, a few fragrant spices, and a wooden spoon, balancing them effortlessly as she carries them to the counter. She slices the pumpkin in half, scooping out the seeds, then places it in the oven to roast. As it bakes, she prepares the graham cracker crust, crushing the biscuits under a rolling pin, mixing the crumbs with melted butter, cinnamon, and sugar. The oven timer beeps. She pulls out the softened pumpkin, replacing it with the crust, which will bake just enough to hold its shape. Just then, the wooden door creaks open. As always, the first customer of the day is Seamus. He's been coming to her bakery for years, ordering the same thing every morning, a coffee and a cinnamon roll. Except on days like today, when pumpkin pie is on the menu. Lily smiles, pouring him a steaming cup of coffee before he even has to ask. "Smells like pumpkin pie," he says with a knowing grin. She laughs, promising to bring him a slice as soon as it's ready. He takes his seat by the window, unfolding his crisp morning newspaper. With Seamus here, it finally feels like the day has begun. She pulls the pie crust from the oven, mashes the roasted pumpkin into a smooth puree, and mixes in cream, eggs, and a fragrant blend of cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger. She pours the silky filling into the crust and places it back into the oven. As the pie bakes, she finally allows herself a moment to rest. By the time the timer beeps, Seamus is already eyeing the oven. She smiles, cutting him a thick, warm slice. On second thought, she cuts one for herself, too. They sit together by the window, forks sinking into the perfectly spiced filling, as the rain continues to patter softly outside. Lily looks around her cozy little bakery, the fairy lights twinkling, the warm scent of cinnamon lingering in the air. This is home, and she wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Baked apples on a blustery day. The rain taps softly against the window panes near Lily's bed, a rhythmic melody blending with the gentle rustling of tree branches outside. Every so often, a gust of wind sends a stronger wave of raindrops against the glass, as if nature itself is knocking at her window. Lily lies under the covers, her eyes closed, listening to the ebb and flow of the storm. She knows it's going to be a blustery day. These quiet moments before rising are her favorite. When her thoughts are still dreamy, her mind drifting between the warmth of sleep and the call of the morning. A yawn escapes her lips as she stretches her arms wide, circling her ankles slowly to wake them up. She takes a deep breath in, savoring the comfort of the soft sheets, then exhales, allowing herself one last minute of stillness before starting the day. The wind rattles the branches outside, sending a spray of raindrops against the house. Lily smiles. There's something thrilling about stormy mornings like this. The unpredictable weather makes everything feel a little more spontaneous, like anything could happen. With that thought, she sits up, swings her feet over the edge of the bed, and stands, stealing a glance out the window. As always, the town is still asleep. She slides her feet into her cozy slippers and makes her way into the kitchen. The first thing she does is set the kettle on the stove, waiting for the comforting sound of bubbling water. As she reaches into the drawer, she pulls out a small metal tea infuser, filling it with fragrant strands of loose-leaf black tea. Each leaf sits at odd angles inside the little ball, and she carefully twists the top to keep them from spilling. When the water is ready, she pours it into her cup, watching as the tea infuser bobs for a moment before sinking. Wisps of amber color swirl into the clear water, blooming into deep, rich hues. She brings the cup to her nose, inhaling deeply. The warmth, the scent. It's the perfect companion for a cold, stormy morning. Feeling a bit adventurous, she skips her usual splash of milk. Today, she'll drink it black. With her cup in hand, she moves to her usual seat by the kitchen window. This is her quiet ritual, her way of easing into the day, watching the sleepy town outside as she sips her tea. Normally by this time, the first rays of sunlight would be pushing through the clouds, but today, the sky is heavy and dark, blanketed by endless gray. The rain falls steadily, shifting in direction as the wind moves through the streets, bending the tree branches across the road. It's definitely a day for thick coats and warm scarves, she decides. As she takes another sip, the warmth spreads through her, chasing away the lingering sleepiness. She wiggles her toes inside her fuzzy slippers, enjoying the little tingling sensation. This is the perfect kind of morning, she thinks. Finishing her tea, she rinses the cup and sets it on the drying rack. She doesn't need to check the time. After years of opening her bakery each morning, her internal clock is as precise as ever. She knows it's time to head out. In her bedroom, she pulls a soft gray shirt from the dresser, a fitting match for the moody sky outside. Then she wraps herself in her thick wool coat, buttoning it up securely. From the closet, she takes out a chunky cable-K knit scarf, its fibers still carrying the warmth of familiar hands. Rose, one of her regular customers, had knitted it for her 2 winters ago. Every time she wears it, she thinks of the friendships she's built in her little bakery, and it fills her with warmth beyond just the fabric. Tucking the scarf up over her chin, she slips her hands into thick gloves and reaches for her trusty yellow umbrella. Now she's ready. Stepping outside, she braces herself against the wind, pushing open the umbrella with determination. A burst of bright yellow pops against the dark morning. Heavy raindrops thunder against the fabric, their sound magnified under the canopy. As she walks, she glances toward the familiar window where a small white cat usually watches her pass. But today, the cat is curled up in a warm little ball, its pink nose tucked beneath its fluffy tail. Lily smiles. Even the cat knows it's a day to stay inside. For a moment, she wishes she could do the same, cozy under a blanket with a book in hand. But then, she thinks of her customers, the ones who will come through her doors, dripping from the rain, looking for warmth, comfort, and a slice of something sweet. That's why she gets up every morning. Rain or shine, the bakery is waiting. She steps carefully over puddles, moving between patches of glistening pavement. The streetlights still glow against the wet ground, the sun nowhere to be seen. Up ahead, the bright colors of her bakery door stand out against the gloom. Even in this dim light, the swirls of green, blue, yellow, and orange are a welcoming sight. This is a haven on a day like this, a place for people to warm their hands around a cup of coffee, to sit by the window with a good book, to share stories with old friends. Just as she reaches for her keys, a sudden gust of wind rushes down the street. Her fingers tighten around the umbrella handle, but the wind is too strong. With a sharp pop, the fabric flips backward, bending the metal ribs. Lily gasps, laughing at the ridiculousness of it. Well, that's the end of that umbrella. Clutching the broken canopy under her arm, she quickly unlocks the door and steps inside. Shaking off the rain, she flicks on the lights. The bakery hums to life around her, warm and familiar. The scent of flour, sugar, and espresso beans lingers from the day before, wrapping around her like an embrace. She takes a deep breath, then exhales. Time to get to work. Feeling spontaneous, she skips the usual cinnamon rolls and instead reaches for an old recipe book, her grandmother's cookbook. Flipping through the worn pages, she finds a recipe she had marked long ago: baked apples. She smiles, reading the note written in her grandmother's careful handwriting. Perfect for a chilly autumn day. That settles it. She gathers the ingredients: butter, brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, rolled oats, and pecans. Then selects a few crisp apples from the basket. Carefully, she cores each apple, carving out a hollow without cutting all the way through. The task quickly becomes second nature, her hands moving in a practiced rhythm. Mixing the softened butter with sugar and spices, she blends it into a thick, fragrant filling, stirring in oats and pecans for a bit of crunch. One by one, she stuffs each apple to the brim, lining them up neatly in a baking dish. A splash of water at the bottom, just like her grandmother's note suggested, will keep them from drying out. Sliding the dish into the oven, she sets the timer. Just then, the door creaks open. Rose steps inside, unwrapping her scarf with a bright smile. Lily hands her a warm cup of coffee, telling her about the new baked apples she's trying today. As they chat, more familiar faces arrive. Seamus, the elderly man who never misses a morning, and a handful of other regulars, shaking off their coats and settling into their usual seats. The oven timer beeps. The scent of warm apples and cinnamon fills the bakery, thick and sweet, wrapping around everyone like a cozy blanket. As Lily plates the first serving, Rose suddenly disappears out the door. A few minutes later, she returns, holding a long, thin package wrapped in shiny paper, to Lily. She reads aloud, "From all your friends at the Rainy Day Bakery." Lily unwraps the gift. Inside is a brand new umbrella. But the umbrella is empty. Bright green, with yellow polka dots, its handle shaped like a duck's head. Lily laughs, holding it up. The cheeriest umbrella she's ever seen. Looking around at the smiling faces of her friends, she feels something deeper than warmth. This place, these people, this is home. And outside, the rain keeps falling, but inside, everything is warm, safe, and filled with the sweetest kind of joy. The perfect batch of cookies. The first thing Lily hears when she opens her eyes is the soft, rhythmic patter of rain against her window. Unlike the blustery storms of previous mornings, today's rain is steady and gentle, falling without the interruption of wind. She yawns, stretching her arms over her head and extending her legs as far as they'll go before sinking back into the warmth of her blankets. These last few moments before she starts her day are some of her favorites, when sleep still lingers and the world outside is just beginning to wake. But today isn't just any morning. Today is Cookie Day. It's the annual cookie decorating party at the bakery, a day filled with laughter, warmth, and the sweet scent of freshly baked treats. Yesterday she prepared several batches of sugar cookies, but there's still more to do before her friends and neighbors arrive. With a final stretch, Lily swings her legs over the edge of the bed and slips her feet into her fuzzy slippers. She pulls her robe off the hook behind her door, wrapping herself in its soft embrace before padding quietly into the kitchen. Her morning routine is familiar and comforting. She sets the kettle on the stove and reaches for a tin of her favorite cranberry orange spiced tea. Perfect for cold mornings like this. As the water begins to simmer, she fills a tea infuser with fragrant strands of black tea, securing the lid carefully before lowering it into her cup. The moment she pours the hot water, steam rises in delicate curls, filling the air with the rich scent of citrus and spice. She adds a splash of milk, then carries the warm cup to her usual seat by the window. Outside, the sky is still dark. At this time of year, the sun takes its time to rise, and the town remains tucked under a gray winter blanket. Across the street, a faint glow shines from her neighbor's window, but most of the town is still asleep. That's part of what she loves about mornings, being one of the first to wake, the quiet calm before the day begins. She takes a slow sip of tea, savoring the warmth that spreads through her chest. They were forecasting snow today, she thinks, brushing the back of her hand against the cold glass. It just has to get a little colder. Snow always makes the bakery feel a little more magical. From behind the counter, she loves watching it pile up on the pavement, where children will soon be running through it, their laughter echoing as they build snowmen beneath the streetlights. She takes her last sip of tea, then rinses the cup and sets it on the drying rack. It's time to get ready. In her bedroom, she pulls on a familiar sweater, the same one she wears every year on Cookie Day. A Christmas gift from years ago. It features a snowman with an oversized grin, its face stitched together in uneven squares rather than circles. It's quirky and imperfect, but that's what makes it special. Her customers always love it, and it never fails to make her smile. Bundled up in her coat, scarf, and gloves, she grabs her new umbrella, green with yellow polka dots and a duck-shaped handle, before stepping outside. The rain has lightened to a fine drizzle, but she still prefers the comfort of being tucked beneath her umbrella. The sound of raindrops pitter-pattering on the fabric brings a sense of peace as she walks. Every time she uses this umbrella, she thinks of the kind-hearted customers who gifted it to her after her old one broke in an autumn storm. Their generosity still warms her heart, and she smiles up at the bright polka dots as they glisten with water streaks. As she passes her neighbor's house, something catches her eye, a black cat staring at her from the window. She pauses, surprised. The usual white cat she sees every morning is nowhere in sight. Then, just behind the black cat, she spots a flicker of white. A tail, curling around the other's body. Ah, she thinks with a smile, a new friend. The two cats, curled together like a yin-yang symbol, remind her how much warmth can come from companionship. By the time she reaches the bakery, the first hint of gray morning light is stretching across the horizon. She slides the key into the lock and steps inside, shaking out her umbrella before placing it by the door. The familiar scent of roasted coffee beans and a faint trace of burnt sugar from yesterday's cookies welcome her home. She flicks on the lights, bringing the bakery to life, then bends down to plug in the strand of fairy lights overhead. They twinkle softly, casting a golden glow over the seating area. Now, she's ready to start the day. Usually, she begins with cinnamon rolls, but today, cookies take priority. She gathers the ingredients: flour, sugar, vanilla extract, chocolate chips, and a bag of colorful hard candies for the stained glass cookies. The butter is already soft from sitting on the counter overnight, perfect for mixing. Dividing the ingredients into separate bowls, she prepares the dough, folding in the chocolate chips carefully so they don't break apart. Using an ice cream scoop, she portions the dough onto a tray and slides it into the oven. As the cookies bake, the first customer of the day arrives. As always, it's Seamus, the elderly man who starts every morning with a cup of coffee at his usual table by the window. Most days he orders a cinnamon roll, but on cookie day, he insists on being the first to taste whatever Lily has baked. To make sure they've turned out all right, he always jokes with a twinkle in his eye. Lily is already pouring his coffee before he reaches the counter. "What kinds are you making this year?" he asks, eyeing the oven. "Chocolate chip, sugar cookies, and stained glass," she replies with a smile. "I suppose I'll have to test one of each," he says, grinning. "Can't risk anything less than perfect, can we?" Lily laughs. "I wouldn't have cookie day without you." Seamus settles into his chair by the window, just as the oven timer beeps. Slipping her hands into oven mitts, she pulls out the tray. The cookies are golden brown, their chocolate centers still soft and gooey. The warm, sugary scent fills the bakery, wrapping around her like a hug. By now, the town is beginning to wake. More customers trickle in. Rose, Gwen Spencer, and her twin boys, who giggle as they toddle around the bakery, their matching red shirts making them easy to spot. Lily gets to work rolling out the sugar cookie dough, carefully cutting out stars, trees, and snowflakes. With smaller cutters, she carves out the centers of some, filling them with crushed hard candy. When baked, the candy will melt into a smooth, glass-like pane, beautiful, colorful, and just a little magical. By the time the second tray of cookies comes out of the oven, the bakery is bustling. She sets up the decorating tables, filling baskets with sprinkles, icing tubes, and powdered sugar. At the center of it all, she places a metal tree, its branches ready to hold the best decorated cookies. Just as she's putting the finishing touches on the setup, the bakery door swings open and the first guests arrive. A young family, new to town. They smile shyly, choosing a table near the door. Then an elderly couple enters, visiting their grandchildren. They greet Shimas warmly before settling in. One by one, more people stream in. Neighbors, friends, familiar faces. The bakery fills with the sound of laughter, chatter, and the rustling of sprinkles being shaken onto cookies. As Lily surveys the room, a sense of warmth fills her chest. This is why she bakes. This is what makes the early mornings and long hours worth it. The joy of community, the comfort of tradition, the magic of sharing something sweet. And then, outside, something catches her eye. The first snowflakes of the season are falling. A child gasps in delight, pointing through the window. Lily can't help herself. She slips past the counter, steps outside, and tilts her face to the sky, arms outstretched. Snowflakes land on her cheeks, her nose, her fingertips. She laughs, spinning in a slow circle, catching snow on her tongue. For a moment, everything is still, peaceful, magical, and inside, the bakery is alive with warmth, laughter, and the scent of freshly baked cookies, the perfect batch. A foggy day for fudge. The soft rhythm of rain against the window gently eases Lily into wakefulness. She doesn't open her eyes right away. Instead, savoring the warmth of her blankets for just a little longer. The pattering drops, steady and soothing, lull her mind into a dreamlike state, where damp streets and misty puddles dance behind her closed eyelids. Slowly, the dream fades as reality pulls her back. Lily smiles, stretching her arms above her head. Even now, she can hear the rain growing faint. It might let up altogether soon, she thinks. With a deep inhale, she traces small circles with her toes, warming up her ankles, before finally swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. Her feet find the comfort of soft slippers, and she makes her way into the kitchen, her routine as familiar as the morning light. As always, the first order of business is tea. She fills the kettle, enjoying the familiar bubbling sound as it heats. There's something grounding about these little details. The warmth of steam rising, the scent of tea leaves unfolding, the way the morning unfolds at its own unhurried pace. Bubbles and rain, two things Lily can always count on at this hour. As she spoons loose tea leaves into her infuser, She watches the patterns they create when the hot water swirls over them. No two mornings are ever quite the same, she muses, even when the rituals remain unchanged. A splash of milk, a gentle stir, and she carries her cup to her wooden window seat. Outside, the neighborhood is still wrapped in darkness, but the rain has given way to mist. Wisps of fog roll in behind her neighbor's house, softening the world beyond the glass. Across the street, the garden, always meticulously kept, still looks perfectly arranged, even in the cool grip of autumn. The fallen leaves, rich in reds, oranges, and golds, seem more like an artist's deliberate brushstrokes than mere remnants of the season. Most of the neighborhood is still asleep. I must be one of the earliest risers in town, Lily thinks with a smile. But she doesn't mind. The bakery is meant to open early, offering warmth and comfort to those who start their days before the sun has fully risen. It's a part of the rhythm of this place, a quiet promise to the town. Her eyes land on a small patch of freshly turned soil near her neighbor's walkway. He must have planted his bulbs yesterday, she realizes. A reminder, then, that she should do the same. Outside the bakery, there's a little garden bed where she's experimented with planting different things. Herbs, vegetables, and now, flowers. She needs to get her bulbs in the ground before the frost comes, letting them settle into the cool earth so they can bloom in the spring. With a last sip of tea, she sets her cup in the sink and turns her attention to getting dressed. She chooses a red shirt with bright yellow details. If the world is going to be gray today, I may as well bring a little color. By the front door, she finds a paper bag filled with flower bulbs. Running her fingers over their rounded edges, she smiles. The daffodils, crocuses, and hyacinths will be a beautiful sight once winter has passed. Slipping on her coat, she tucks the bag into her pocket, then pulls on her gloves and loops the handle of her green and yellow polka-dotted umbrella around her wrist. When she steps outside, the fog is thick, obscuring the street in every direction. She pauses, breathing in deeply. The cool, misty air feels fresh and clean, carrying a quiet stillness that makes the world feel momentarily paused. Her boots tap softly against the pavement as she makes her way to the bakery. The rain must not have lasted long, as only small puddles remain. Nothing too difficult to step over. Unlike most mornings, she doesn't open her umbrella. Instead, she tilts her head up toward the sky, letting the mist settle onto her skin in cool, weightless droplets. As she reaches the bakery, its familiar multicolored door peeks out through the fog, disappearing and reappearing like a hidden gem waiting to be found. Even if she couldn't see it at all, she would still know exactly where to go. After all these years, she could walk this path in her sleep. Lily steps inside, shaking the fog from her coat before flicking on the lights. The bakery hums to life, bathed in the golden glow of the overhead lamps. The scent of coffee, flour, and sugar lingers from the day before, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Her first task: plugging in the fairy lights that twinkle above the seating area. She pauses for a moment, watching them flicker to life. This might be my favorite moment of the day. The bakery is officially awake. Today's special? Fudge. Yesterday, she set aside her favorite cold weather recipe. Rich, indulgent, and perfect for a foggy day like this. The worn piece of paper, smudged with cocoa powder and softened by years of use, holds a simple yet magical combination: a chocolate chips, sweetened condensed milk. That's all it takes to make something wonderful. Lily smiles, already envisioning the flavors. Peppermint for the holidays. She'll crush candy canes on top, letting their bright, minty crunch contrast with the smooth chocolate. Hazelnut for Rose. She already knows her friend will be delighted by the toasted nuts nestled into each piece. Orange chocolate for herself. The citrus will bring just the right amount of brightness to the deep cocoa richness. She retrieves her double boiler, her mother's secret to perfectly melted chocolate. As steam rises from the bottom pot, she stirs the chocolate chips, watching them transform into molten silk. A splash of condensed milk, a swirl of peppermint extract, and the first batch is ready. She pours the glossy mixture into a lined pan, tapping it gently on the counter to settle. Then she crushes candy canes, sprinkling the ruby red shards across the top. Just as she sets it aside to cool, the bakery door creaks open. Rouse. Sure is foggy out there, Rose says, rubbing her mittened hands together. She tells Lily how she got turned around this morning, unable to see more than a few feet ahead, but then in the distance, she saw the soft glow of the bakery's fairy lights. It were like little guiding stars, ushering me home, she says with a smile. Lily grins, already reaching for a fresh cup of coffee. Well, since you made it, you'll be happy to know I'm making hazelnut fudge today. Rose claps her hands together, delighted. As she carries her coffee to her usual seat by the window, Lily turns back to her work. She zest an orange, mixing its fragrant peel into the next batch of fudge, letting the citrus oils blend with the melted chocolate. The final pan is for hazelnut fudge, each square topped with a single toasted nut. The scents of peppermint, hazelnut, and orange swirl through the bakery, mingling with the ever-present aroma of coffee. Outside, the fog remains thick, muffling the world in a soft, quiet haze. Lily glances toward the garden outside. It's a slow day, she thinks. Might as well plant those bulbs. As she slips outside, Rose follows, grabbing a trowel. Side by side, they kneel in the damp earth, hands cold but spirits warm, chatting as they tuck each bulb into its new home. The fog presses in around them, wrapping the world in quiet mystery, but here, at the bakery, in the company of a good friend, Lily feels nothing but warmth. And inside, on the counter, the fudge cools, waiting to be sliced, waiting to be shared.